Hey guys, Bobby Thompson back with another video, and in this video I want to talk about where are the solar tides. So first things first, I want to talk about the amount of water in, on, and around the world. So you can see by this depiction here, we have the Earth in the heliocentric model, the spherical Earth, and this represents all the water. Here we have these little droplets here represent liquid freshwater and freshwater lakes and rivers, but combine all three together and you have all the water in the world. And this is on, in, and above the Earth. So this would be in the air, in the clouds, the atmosphere. And the source for this is USGS, or the United States Geological Survey. And here's the URL if you want to go there yourself and verify that this indeed did come from there. So I didn't know too much about tides before I started researching flat Earth. I knew what high tide was and low tide. What I wasn't aware of was that high tides are on opposite sides of the Earth at all times. And one high tide is directly under the moon, and the other high tide is directly opposite that, on the opposite side of the Earth. So wherever the moon is around the Earth, you have a high tide following it, beneath it, and you have another high tide on the opposite side. So the mainstream scientific explanation for this is gravity, right? So the moon's gravity is pulling the bodies of water, the oceans, and the explanation for how you get this tide here is comical to me. So what mainstream science says is that all this water here is pulled, but the Earth inside of this sack of water, if you will, is pulled inside of the body of water. Now, here's the entire amount of water, including water in the atmosphere. Wrap that around the Earth, okay? And mainstream science wants to tell you that we get this bulge here because the land mass of the Earth is being pulled inside of this, what can only be depicted as a sack of water. But that's obviously not the case, right? In reality, the water would be the equivalent of an apple skin, right? It'd be minuscule in comparison to the size of the Earth. Just another image to paint the picture. You have the moon, high tide, directly opposite of that, high tide on the opposite side of the Earth. There's a couple different terms when we start talking about tides, just so I know you're going to be talking with someone later and they're going to be trying to explain neap tides to you, and spring tides, also known as king tides, lunar tides, solar tides. You'll hear all these terms, right? And some of them are synonymous with other terms. But a neap tide is a tide just after the first and third quarters of the moon, when there is least difference between high and low tides. Neaps occur at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. They only occur twice per month, all right? So in the lunar orbit of the Earth, twice in its orbit does it become 90 degrees from the sun, right, in relation to the Earth. So at this point in its orbit, it's 90 degrees, and at this point in its orbit, it's 90 degrees. And these are neap tides, right? So neap tides occur twice per month. Now, the other most common type of tide is a spring tide. And there's a spring tide when there is a high tide, the sun, moon, and Earth are all in alignment. That's also called syzygy. So syzygy is it can be when any planets are aligned, but in relation to tides, it's when the Earth, sun, and moon are all in alignment. So this video comes from NOAA, another government agency, and they're explaining the different types of tides. So this large lump on each side is the high tide, and the high tide is caused, you could you could call those lunar tides as well. So you have these tides on top and bottom. And you'll hear of solar tides, right? The yellow here, but notice how the yellow never changes. It really plays no measurement. Notice how the amount of water here is really no different than the amount of water here. Instead, what they did is they just credit all the water here to solar tides here. And then when it comes up here, they credit more of the water to lunar tides. So if you're looking at the amount of water, it's barely changing here. I mean, compare here, and they're just changing what they're giving credit to, right? What's more important, and what you should notice the most, is that the moon is responsible for the largest tides. And that is so in contradiction to the gravity of the sun, right? The gravity of the sun dictates the Earth's orbit, and the Earth dictates the moon's orbit. So the moon has no impact on the Earth as far as its gravitational impact on the Earth is so nominal. It can't even change the Earth's orbit at all. The sun, obviously, in the heliocentric model, has much more gravitational attraction. But that gravity, which is strong enough to control the path of the Earth, can't even match the gravitational pull of the moon when it comes to the tides. Now, that only takes common sense, right? Common sense would tell you something's off here, right? This doesn't make sense. What someone with common sense would expect to see is that wherever this Earth is in its orbit around the sun, for that high tide, to be over here. And you certainly would never expect a bulge on the opposite side of the Earth. That makes no sense. So again, what we see, just driving the point home, the sun, the Earth, and here, where are the tides? First off, even if I were gonna subscribe to the theory that the moon was responsible for the tide, I wouldn't expect this, right? And that's laughable, because not only would I not expect to see this, I mean, the sun should have the biggest gravitational impact on the Earth and all the different mechanisms on Earth. You can't tell me that the sun would be dictating the path of the Earth, but it has no effect on the Earth's water, or certainly little to no effect. What you do see makes perfect sense on a flat Earth, right? So when the sun, we have this dielectric Earth, and when the sun and moon are together going over the waters, they have the most amount of pull on the water. Where this has a problem is trying to use gravity as the explanation, right? When you use gravity as the explanation, this makes no sense over here, and it makes no sense for why the high tide isn't always pulled towards the sun. So that's my quick little video on tides and where are the solar tides. I don't see them, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.